You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram.
Hi, my name is Denis Musali, and I'm the Communications Manager for Uganda Cricket Association, and you are listening to the Dibbly Dobbly podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly podcast. And on the podcast, we have started a new series on the podcast, looking at associate nations within cricket and how they are developing the game in their country. Many of us cricket fans know so much about the established cricketing countries and not enough on the associate nations who play cricket. So it would be nice to learn more about those associate countries, and via the podcast, people can learn more as well. For today's Associate Cricket Series episode, we are discussing all things Uganda cricket, and joining me to discuss and talk all things Uganda cricket is the Head of Communications of Ugandan Cricket, Denis Musali. Denis, welcome.
Thank you very much. Welcome, and I'm happy to be here. Always very, very excited to talk about Ugandan cricket.
Absolutely, Denis. And I'm sure everyone would have followed the story and the journey of Ugandan cricket, especially last year in the T20 World Cup when they qualified in that tournament. And it was a great story, as we will discuss as we get into our chat today. But it certainly was the headline of the cricketing world at the time when it happened, you know, knocking one of the strongest African nations in Zimbabwe out and qualifying for a global event, which has really put Ugandan cricket on the map. And no doubt we'll discuss that further as we get into our chat today, Denis. But it's a pleasure to have you on, and it's always good to hear people's stories and making a difference in the associate world. And doing the Associate Cricket Series, as I've done on the podcast for the last year or so, it's been wonderful to hear people's stories, the good people in cricket making a difference, and especially in the associate world. And no doubt that will be the case with you today, Denis, as we chat away in this episode of the podcast today. But Denis, as I do with all my guests that I've interviewed on the podcast, I like to take them back to when they first got into cricket. And it's been very fascinating listening to people's memories on how they started to get into cricket. So, Denis, let's go back to the very beginning of your cricket journey. What were your earliest memories of watching, playing, and even going to the cricket?
I think I got how I got in cricket. I think is entangled with the cricket, how cricket is played in this country. I was fortunate enough that my parents could afford me to take me to one of you call it the elite schools in this country. Sort of cricket in this country has a culture in elite schools, and these elite schools were essentially schools that were founded by the church missionaries who came to Uganda. So that's how the game actually came to Uganda in terms of the history of the game. So I think when the missionaries came here, there were particular church-founded schools that they came up with, and the game sort of took a root in these particular schools. So I was fortunate enough that and these schools, like I've said, they're elite schools. They're not your everyday school that everyone will walk into and get in there. So you need to either be one of the top students in the country, or your parents should be able to afford to take you to that sort of school. So for me, in my perspective, I was fortunate enough that my parents, of course, my grades got me there, but still, then you have to pay school fees and all. My parents could still afford that the fees for that particular school. The school in question is called Busoga College Mweri. It's I think. No bragging, but it's the best cricket playing school in this country. It's produced some of the best, the greatest cricketers in this country. So I was fortunate that I was able to go to that school. And of course, when you go to schools like this, the sporting culture in those particular schools leans towards cricket. Everyone is playing cricket, whether you're not good enough to take onto the pitch, at least you're good enough to play around the dormitories. You know, there's small games that we play on the side. So the entire school, everyone has an idea about cricket. The inter-house competitions in the schools are sort of like a national football final. So people take everything very, very serious about cricket. And I was lucky that I was able to go to that kind of school. So I think when I got there, I think I think on the day that my parents dropped me off, there must have been an inter-house cricket match that was happening. And of course, as a newbie in the school, it's not like you have a class to go to. You're still going to wait around for a whole week of induction. So there's really not so much to do in terms of classwork. The only thing we had to do was to just sort of maybe watch the cricket games every afternoon when the guys are done with class. And I think for me that the moment I got there, I just got interested. And here we are so many years later. I think that was 1999 when I got my first real involvement in school. So that's what, about 26 years later, I am still very much in love with the game. And I mean, that's sort of my first interaction with the game. And because I went to a school that has a cricketing culture, it's difficult for you to get in, to get to the real deal, especially if you're a young one. So we spent a lot of time, carrying the mats for the big boys to play, then carrying it off, taking it back to the teacher's house where we used to keep it. That was a sort of routine when we were young, when we were the young ones who were trying to show interest in the game. So it probably took me about 2 years before I really got a good proper opportunity, when I think probably someone was missing. One of the big boys was not around that day, and they're like, "Hey, you, Dennis, you young one, you've always wanted to play. Go and stand a third man or something like that." So I'm like, "Yeah, okay, finally my chance is here." So I think that's sort of where I got my opportunity. But for all those years I'd been around cricket, I liked the guys playing in whites and things. All those things interested me. But I think, and it was a good thing, by the way. In hindsight, when you look at it, it was a good thing that you don't get here and then you start playing immediately, but you go through the steps. So we spent, especially on the young ones, we spent a lot of time scoring, especially scoring games, learning how to fix the stumps in the ground, so you know what distance they're supposed to be. So it takes you a while before you start to properly start to play. But in hindsight, when you look at it, in the beginning it sounds a bit mean, but later on you realize that first education actually was really important for you to learn the laws of the game, to learn those different small things that later on add up and help you along the way. So that was sort of my first proper interaction with cricket when I joined Busoga College, Moiri.
Yes, no, that's brilliant. Yes.
Yeah.
I suppose it's like with many people getting into cricket, you either play it with your friends or in school, as you did, or at a club or some sort. And yeah, you're like absorbing knowledge like a sponge. You want to learn everything about cricket, and I think everyone's gone down that rabbit hole in their journey of learning about the game. Certainly, I have.
I think sometimes now I feel that the terms have changed. I don't want to say things are a bit easier for the young ones, but I think I see a lot of them. They just walk in there and then they start playing immediately. So I feel they sort of miss that education where you learn. You'll probably find guys who've played a couple of years, but they don't really know how to score in the old style scorebook. If you go away from the online stuff where you're using your phone, but where you have to put a dot ball and then put end of the over. This is how you indicate a wide and things like that. So sometimes I feel now guys get to play immediately before they start. They start where we started. I don't want to say ours was the right way, but maybe things have changed now, and even us will have to adapt.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I suppose if you go down that route of not playing straight away, but learning about how the game works and operates, you fully understand how the game works and operates. But especially people from non-cricketing countries, it takes a very long time to learn how cricket works, obviously, because it can be confusing at times. But in reality, it's quite a simple game once you understand the bare bones of it. So in terms of your playing career, Dennis, how would you describe yourself as a cricketer?
Keeper batter, very, very good keeper, a competent opening batsman. I used to like batting at the top of the order. I think I was when I started playing, there wasn't too much 50 over cricket. I mean, there wasn't too much T20 cricket. So we used to play a lot of 50 over cricket in the National League or otherwise, or in our under 19 competitions. It was also mostly 50 over cricket. I think the sort of T20 we played was our school's competition. and schools, because of it's a competition and you want it to end quickly, so we played a lot of that short form cricket. But that was even before T20 was a known format, because that's the sort of you guys play 25 overs, and then that will constitute a match, 25 overs per side. But I was a wicket-keeper batsman. I started off as a medium pacer, but I think I realized that I didn't have the height to trouble any batters. And I think one of those days when our wicketkeeper was missing, I sort of took the gloves and sheesh. I think I was a natural with the gloves. Very, very easy for me. I think wicket keeping is just, even now when I play once in a while in the local league, it just comes very, very easy for me. Everything is natural. So wicket keeper batsman for my school, and like I told you, our school was really a cricketing school. So it was a big deal for us to, especially be on the final 14 that is going to represent the school in our annual schools competition, which is really a very, very big deal as well for us here in Uganda. Fortunate enough, I think in my high school, my A level, we have O level, which is really the juniors, and then A levels. In my A levels, I was made the captain of the school team, which is also another big deal. So for those 2 years, I was the captain of the school team. We were able to win the school's championship. Again, a big, big deal, because then you're sort of the best cricketing school in the country. And from there on, I was fortunate enough, because I think I was among. We had a very, very good. We had a very talented generation of young players, but I was fortunate to be among the best. We were able to qualify for the World Cup in 2004 in Bangladesh as a generation, because our generation at least qualified for 2 World Cups. And then in 2006, we again qualified for the World Cup and played in Sri Lanka. So I think for me, those were really the happy times for me, especially playing as a junior. I didn't play so much for the national team because after university, I got a job, and then there was not enough time for me to try and play cricket to another level. I think I only played 1 tour for the national team, but even then I couldn't keep up because the demands from the coach and my work. I failed to find a balance, and then the choice was very easy to make. I had to choose going to work rather than playing cricket. But I enjoyed my junior years as a cricketer, and of course the highlight being for us in that generation playing at the 2006 World Cup. We when we played against England, Alistair Cook and his team. We played against England. We played in that particular World Cup against Bangladesh as well. That Bangladesh team had some talented players, but it's one in 2006 that had the likes of Sakib Al Hassan, Tamim Iqbal, Mushfiqur Rahim. But we played. I think the highlight for us was playing against England, the team that had Ravi Bopara, Sir Alistair Cook, Liam Plunkett, Samit Patel, some very Luke Wright, some very, very, very good players. And recently, when I think when Alistair Cook went on to become a legend of the game, and he was nicknamed the chef, we the people who played in my generation had sort of a joke around it that the rest of the world calls him the chef, but I think that name came from us, the Ugandans, because when when we played against England, everyone kept telling that the best player on the England team is Alistair Cook, so you need to be careful about him and things like that. So we used a Ugandan word to describe who he is, and that Ugandan word literally translates into someone being called a chef. So we used to call him in Uganda it's called Omufumbi, but Omufumbi literally translates into someone being called the chef. So that whole tournament we just kept calling him Omufumbi. So later on, when the whole world picked up when the rest of the world picked up the name chef, everyone was like, it's us the Ugandans who came up with that name. The rest of the guys just picked it up from us. So I think that was the highlight for us, and personally for me as well. Nothing will ever take away that experience of playing at the World Cup. And I'm very happy. I think when we had a new generation of players qualifying to go for the same World Cup in 2002, I was very happy that there are guys who've come after us and they've also been able to experience the same thing. So in terms of playing, for me, I would say that was mostly it. But any day, anytime, if you woke me up in my sleep, I would take a very good catch for you behind the stumps.
Yeah, definitely. That's good to hear. And it's good to hear that you were able to play against future England stars, Alistair Cook
Yeah,
and the like that
yeah,
you mentioned there,
yeah.
which is pretty amazing
Yeah, in
to see what
2004 it
they've
was
done for their
England.
careers for England over the years. They've done pretty well, those players that you
Yeah,
mentioned. And obviously, everyone starts from somewhere and
yeah.
turn themselves into great players. Do you have a favourite cricketer that you modelled yourself on? Wicketkeeper, batter, particular?
Yeah, keeper, but I think I liked Tatenda Taib, the former captain of Zimbabwe. We had sort of the same stature, short, and also competent with the bat. But I think later on in my cricketing journey, I got drawn towards Australia. I think mostly because of the Australian way, the Australian mentality. That's how I used to like to play. I was very tough. I mean, you don't leave you leave skin on the ground. You don't leave anything. So I think I got drawn to that. And Adam Gilchrist, I was at a lefty, but I liked Adam Gilchrist. And of course, I think my favorite was the King Shenwan. So, but I would say I think my first must have been is at a tender time from Zimbabwe.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, Gilly was a very, very fine keeper and batter in his day, and obviously revolutionised wicket keeping for the better, I suppose, because
Yeah,
wicket keepers were considered just to be keepers only and not
yeah,
batters. And back in the old days of cricket, usually batted at number 10 or 11, going way,
exactly.
way back in the game's history, but then soon got promoted up the order once
Um,
Adam Gilchrist did his thing. So your family, Dennis,
yeah.
are they involved in cricket, your family, or not so much?
Um, I would say I think no, they've been involved. It's difficult for you to play sport for that long in this country, especially if you've gone to, like I've mentioned, if you've gone to an elite school. Your dad or mom is not sending you there to play cricket. There are expectations on you, and if they don't support you to play the game, then it will be difficult for you to even be able to sustain that. My dad went to the same school as I did, so it's sort of like a family generational school. So my dad played a bit. He had an understanding of what the game was, but I would say both my parents were very very supportive. My mom and dad very supportive of me. I think we only had one deal for me to just keep playing, as long as among the top three students in the class. That was good enough. So it was you win some, you lose some. So I had to find a way of making sure I balance the two for me to keep playing the game. And as long as those two are achieved, my mom was always okay with it. No, no, my parents were very supportive because you need kit, you need shoes, and they always provided that as long as I kept my end of the bargain. So I tried as much as possible to make sure that I make sure my grades in class don't drop, and that's how I was able to play cricket. So I think my parents were very supportive of the same, and they were always very proud when we had an opportunity to go somewhere. So they were always very proud that I'm playing for Uganda, and I'm representing the country. So you'll see you in the back pages, and they'll be like, "Hey, we're going to buy the newspaper." I think my first trip out of the country, that was when we were going for the World Cup. My mom had to drag the whole family to the airport, and they all had to wait for me to board the plane and before they go back home. So they've been very supportive of my cricket.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. All families are in anything that you do in life, I suppose, let alone cricket. So you're now head of communications for Ugandan cricket. Tell us about your role and how did you get into that position for Ugandan cricket?
Yeah, so I think when I stopped being actively involved in playing, there was an opportunity for us to try and improve the way we communicate externally. Maybe internally we're doing well, different communications, but then we realized that especially Uganda Cricket wanted to try and improve on their non-ICC income without being over reliant on ICC money, and that required cricket to start to expose itself, to start to speak to to the rest of Uganda, because I think then we were very comfortable with the ICC money, so we didn't need a lot of local sponsorship for us to be able to do other things. But then we realized that for us to be in that conversation, people didn't know what we were doing. They didn't know so much about our activities, so they needed someone to be able to help with that. So from my background, I write cricket content for Kaowa Sports. I write a bit for Emerging Cricket. So there was a bit of context in what I was going to do. My university degree is in the economics and not mass communication, but I sort of learned on the job, and I've been able to. I mean, I think I've been holding it down since 2019, making sure I support the association in terms of communications and marketing, and how we position ourselves as a brand, how we communicate with different stakeholders, whether it is government or corporate entities. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years, and it has helped us raise the profile of the game locally. We've been able to get some local support, local sponsorships coming to partner with us. I think because of the way we've been communicating who we are, what we do, and how we do what we do. So it's been a very good experience so far, and hopefully that even when I'm not here, we continue to make sure that we are in the conversation. I think from when I joined, we had about one or two people reporting about cricket in whether it is on a sports website or in the dailies. But right now we have grown our capacity to over 50 people who can comfortably report that the cricket cranes went somewhere and were able to win a game and relay a story to a different person. So that's what that has really been our key of making sure that we communicate better, and then we can be in the we can be in a position to compete with other sports in terms of local partners. So because it's not just us. I mean, there are other sports that are doing well as well locally. So the purpose of us to communicate better was to try and make sure that local sponsors are interested in partnering with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, isn't it, to have good communications and exposure, and in terms of getting the sport out there, and how people can get involved in cricket. But thank you, Denis, for sharing your journey in cricket, and it's always fascinating from my point of view to listen to everyone's journey into cricket and how they got into it, because everyone's story is unique in some way, and especially from all parts of the world. Everyone has a different path into cricket. So thank you for sharing that with us today, Denis. Really appreciate it. Denis, I thought to start this interview on Ugandan cricket. Let's talk about the history of cricket in Uganda. You can learn a lot about cricket from its history, and the history of cricket in Uganda is quite interesting. So, Denis, give us a brief overview on the history of cricket in Uganda.
Yeah, I'll give as much as I know, because when the game started, maybe I wasn't there, but from the different interviews we've had and the people spoken to, and I hit it on it. So the game in this country started about the 1900s, but it came here with the church missionaries. The Church Missionary Society really introduced the game in this country, and they introduced it in about 4 good schools that was set up by them. And like I mentioned, most of these schools were elite schools. One of those schools is a school where it's a school. It's called King's College Budo. King's, as is in the name, was a school for only royals. So you can that's a sort of those are the sort of schools that I'm talking about. So it was a school for mostly the royals. That is where that is one of the schools where the game was introduced, and sort of took root in those particular schools. So somehow cricket was essentially embedded in those particular schools. So if you didn't go to any of those schools, then there was a big chance that you'd miss out on ever playing cricket. And I think that is what we've been trying to demystify for all these years, to try and make sure that the game is spread to as many schools as possible. But the game came with the church missionaries, and then when they were here, of course, there were Indian laborers who were working on constructing the East African railway from Kenya to Uganda. So the first people who ever really played the game were it was mostly played by the whites and the Indians. So they would mostly play amongst themselves, I think, during their weekends and their free time. But that was in the 1900s. So later on, I think that's when a couple of blacks started to pick up on the game towards maybe the 1950s and the 1960s. And of course, in the history of Uganda, there was a time when Asians were expelled from the country by the president then. And when they were expelled, that left a bit of a gap. That created the opportunity for the locals to get more involved in the game, because now, of course, after independence, most of the white people moved back to the UK and other countries, and then in 1970, I think it was in 1972, the Asians were expelled. So meaning that there was a big gap there in terms of who can be able to play cricket, and that's when most of the locals took up the game. So the locals, that's when the first black and local cricket club was formed just around 1970s, and it is called Africa Cricket Club, which is still in existence up to now. It was formed then. It was formed then by a couple of locals, and through their small group, they created, I think, a second local club towards 1994, which is called Wanderers Cricket Club. So there were sort of two local clubs where people could be able to play cricket, and in that there were not so many facilities as well. So there was like one sort of place where they could play cricket every time they could. So that's sort of the history of the game and how it has been told. And then Uganda became a member of the ICC in 1998. That's when Uganda became a member of the ICC, and we played our first ICC tournament in 2001 in Canada. That is when we were able to compete as Uganda. But before that, we were playing as a region. We used to play as the East and Central Africa combined. So the East and Central Africa combined had Uganda, Kenya, Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia. Yes, I think it had those 5 countries. So different players would be picked from those countries and make up that whole team. But most of the players on that team, I think, were from Kenya. There were just about 1 or 2 Ugandans who played for that East and Central Africa combined team. But all the way up to 1998 is when we started playing as Uganda. But before then, we were playing as part of the East and Central Africa combined team. So I think that is a brief history. I cannot speak on the history of the game as an authority, but I think that's what I've mostly heard about the history of the game in this country and how it's been able to evolve all the way up to where we are right now.
Yes, well, thank you for giving us that brief history lesson there, Denis, on the history of cricket in Uganda. And it's quite fascinating listening to people explain about how the game was started or originated in certain countries, especially in the associate world. It's very common that the English came and settled and brought the game of cricket to those certain countries. So thank you for that, Denis, sharing that part of Ugandan cricket history in terms of how the game originated, how the game started, and where the game is today in Uganda. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, Denis.
You're very welcome.
Denis, let's talk about the Uganda national cricket teams, the women's and men's teams. It'd be good to gain your insights on the 2 teams and learn more about their achievements, the players' stories, because many of the players come from diverse backgrounds. So Denis, for those who may not know a lot about the Uganda women's and men's teams, can you tell us more about them, the players, and some of their stories?
Yeah, so our men's cricket team is nicknamed the Cricket Cranes, and the women's cricket team are nicknamed as the Victoria Pearls. I would say the current composition of the team, like you've mentioned, has, for both teams, maybe let me start with the men. For both teams, for the men's team, a diverse background. I think the team right now is a representative of what Uganda cricket has been able to do over the years. In the past, you would find that most of the players on the team were from the elite schools. They were mostly from either Musoga College, Mary, or King's College, Budo. They were mostly from the elite schools. But now, I think with the opportunities that the ICC has provided, and of course the resources as well, cricket has been able to spread to different parts of the country. So now the team is more, it has a more diverse representation on in terms of composition. There are players from different walks of life, but of course there are players who come from. I never want to call them ghetto stories, but players who come from less privilege, but they're very very talented. They've been able to work hard and be able to show that they can be able to play at the international level. So we have a lot of players who come from what we call our ghettos here, but they have they are some of the best talent that we have in this country. We are fortunate that one of our main cricket stadium in Uganda, here in the capital in Kampala, is located next to a big community of people who come from the ghetto, and it's very easy for the kids to just cross the road and then get into the cricket ground. So when they come there, they normally find development coaches to help them learn the game, or some of them usually. I'll tell a story of one of them who plays on the national team now, Juma Miyagi. I remember he used to come around because he was staying with his grandmother and cousin, and his cousin was playing on the under 19 team. But because his cousin never wanted to leave him home, by himself and doing nothing, so he would tell him, you tag along and let's go. You wait for me as I practice, and then when we're done, we'll just come back home together. So that's how he sort of came around. So, but because there's always so much activity happening in Lugogo, so he will be like, as long as you're around Lugogo, please don't, like run into the traffic and then get me in trouble with grandma. So just hang around. So while his cousin was training with the under 19 team, he would, find the rest of his friends who are playing some simple games on the side, and then that's how he got interested in the game. So at the end of the day, they both go back home when they've had a bit of cricket. So those are some of the stories of the sort of players that we have. Eventually, Juma Miyagi has gone on to become the opening bowler for the Cricket Cranes. He's played at the Under 19 World Cup in 2002. He's now opening the bowling for Uganda. He played at the 2024 T20 World Cup in West Indies. But you can imagine how he got involved in the game. Some people will never know that story. And I remember even then the Under 19 coach, usually when people would get in trouble, he'll be like, if you come late, I'm chopping maybe $1 off your allowance, and I'm going to give it to Miyagi for him to go and buy his grandma something when he's going back home. He used to be used in that reference. But those are some of there's so many stories that we have on the team. So there are players from different backgrounds on the team, and I mean the guys now have, and because of the opportunity that times have changed, there's a bit of money in the game as well. So the guys have full-time contracts. So they get a monthly stipend from the association for being part of the national team. For the girls who are the Victoria Pals, it's sort of a similar story, not different. A lot of the girls they don't come from a lot of privilege. Unlike the men's game, the girls' game only started in Uganda in 2000. So for it didn't take root in mostly the elite schools. It took root in schools where we had maybe teachers who were able to push the game, and these teachers were not mostly in these privileged schools. So you would say a lot of girls don't come from privilege. They come from backgrounds where they need a lot of support and help. So we have a lot of girls on that team who come from it's about 300, let's say 600 kilometers from the capital Uganda. They come from a place called Soroti, and they got interested in the game because someone took the game to Soroti. Someone was actually working there, and then when he was on his usual evening, someone who had been posted to work in Soroti from Kampala, but he loved cricket from Kampala. So when he was posted to Soroti, he was on his usual evening jog. He saw a couple of girls trying to play cricket. He was like, hey, okay, how can I be able to help them, and how can I be able to support them? And that's how they got involved in the game, and eventually got on to become very good players for the Victoria Pals. So a lot of the girls he's been able to use the game in that region as a way of getting girls out of that region. Is very what is the right English word? There's a prevalent vice of young girls getting into marriages very, very early. So he used cricket as a way of making sure that the girls are kept away from something like that. They're kept busy by being able to play. And then when their parents hear that, oh, okay, where's my daughter? No, she's playing cricket. The parent is sort of a bit satisfied, and then there are other things that come with playing cricket. Maybe they get a scholarship to continue studying school, because in that part of the country, if your father or mother can't afford to pay school fees for you to push your father in school, they will just allow you to go and get married despite the age. So they sort of use cricket to help the girls escape that reality of their lives, and a lot of them have gone on to play for the national team. So cricket, unlike for the boys, doesn't have too much privilege with it. A lot of the girls who play have found a sort of refuge in the game, but they're very, very exceptionally talented players, and they've pushed the envelope too much, so much that I think in Africa, our Victoria Pearls, probably out of South Africa and Zimbabwe, are the next best team. So, but even for them, cricket has been sort of the game has given them an opportunity maybe they would never have gotten in their lives. They're able to earn a living out of the game. They can look after themselves. A lot of them have been educated because of cricket, because they play for good schools that are able to give them bursaries to be student players. So a lot of them have been able to benefit, especially socially, in my opinion, out of cricket, because it has saved them from, if they never had cricket, maybe they would have been married already. And there are examples of some of them who have not been fortunate enough to escape that reality. So some of them, we lost some good players because their parents insisted on them being married, and then of course, normally when they give birth, your husband does not allow you to play the game and things like that. So some of them have not been fortunate enough, but those that have been fortunate enough have been able to stay in the game, and they've made a very good contribution for Uganda.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to see both teams doing really well. The stats back that up in T20 internationals over the years, since the status was given to all countries for T20 internationals when the ICC did that a few years back. Both teams have 50 plus wins and doing pretty well, good results. And obviously the men qualifying for the T20 World Cup last year, Dennis, was a great achievement. And obviously we saw the team win against Papua New Guinea in that low scoring affair in that match, but had the opportunity to play other countries as well in that group, which contained New Zealand and Afghanistan, which were tough opponents. But nonetheless, the experience was good for the team. Talk us through that. For the men's team to finally get that spot in the qualifiers, you had to knock off one of the dominant African countries for a very long time, and that was Zimbabwe, and that was a big story when that happened in the qualifiers. Everyone was going nuts about it. But talk us through the work for the team to get to that point, and then to go to the World Cup, T20 World Cup last year, and to achieve what they achieved by winning the game and just being there. Talk us through that process and what it meant for the team to finally achieve the goal of reaching an ICC event of any sort.
Yeah, I think a wonderful experience, not just for the boys, but I think for the whole country. And that World Cup wasn't just for them. I think we sort of took the narrative that this is a World Cup for so many people, for the guys that came before us, the guys who made sure, who with their bare hands, because the history, they tell us in history that our first cricket ground here was put together with bare hands by a few individuals. So this World Cup was not just for the guys who were the 15 guys who did well, but there are people like those who made a contribution, the guys who created the first local indigenous cricket club. I mean, for them, this was the goal ultimately, to be able to take Uganda to the World Cup. I mean, for Uganda to be on the global stage and play at the World Cup. So that World Cup had been in the making for so many years, for so many people. I think that was the ultimate reward for so many guys. For example, that team, there's a gentleman called Frank Nsubuga, the oldest player to ever play at the World Cup. And for him, he's been playing for the national team for the last 26 years. And something had to give. For him, this was the highlight, to be able to help Uganda qualify for a World Cup. So the opportunity wasn't just for those just the 15 players, but for for very many generations. There are people who are very, very happy to just see Uganda finally being able to play at a Senior Men's World Cup, because maybe they had tried, but they never got Uganda there. But even if they failed, there are so many other things. Cricket in Uganda thrives a lot on volunteers and individuals who use their own resources to make sure that the game keeps going. And even those people uh, have to be recognized on that path for us to be able to play at the World Cup. So the narrative back home was that was uh, this was sort of a reward for so many people who behind the scenes who worked so hard to make sure that the game stays alive in this country. They could have just provided shoes for a national team player who never had, who played before to just make sure you're gonna get to a good ranking, but just were not there to continue on that journey. And then, but those that have been able to come after them and pick up that mantle have gone on to do well and take the team to the next level. So that was the sort of reward for so many years and so many people being part of that journey. But it was a very, very good opportunity for us. We come from a country where not so many teams qualify for the World Cup. Um, I think besides cricket, the only other team that has qualified for the World Cup from this neck of the woods is probably netball and rugby team who have qualified for the rugby sevens. But other than that, there are not so many teams from Uganda ever qualify for the World Cup. So for cricket to be one of those few that can be able to qualify a national team for the World Cup was a great, great achievement, and we're very, very proud of the boys. I think the moment we beat Zimbabwe, we knew that unless something goes against us, we should be able to qualify, because our other games after Zimbabwe were Nigeria, Rwanda, and of course the usual potential banana skin was going to be Kenya. Kenya is a derby in this region, so we thought Kenya would be party spoilers. But I think destiny and fate had that Uganda had to be at the World Cup, and in the end, once we were able to win those, it was, and actually, especially the Kenyan game. Kenyan game was a bit nervy, but once we were able to win that one, Rwanda were never going to beat us anyway. We knew that we were the World Cup, so it was only confirmed when we beat Rwanda. But we knew after beating Zimbabwe, and then people, I think the boys started believing a little bit more. We just knew that we just needed to take care of the remaining games. As long as we never lost, we were able going to be in the World Cup. So a great, great opportunity for a whole generation, a different generation of players. But I think the celebration was for an entire, entire different sort of generations that were able to make sure the game can get this far. So a very, very proud moment. And like I mentioned, it was just unfortunate for us that the games were very early in the morning in terms of time. But I guarantee you, we stayed up and watched all the games. We sort of we had WhatsApp groups where we made sure we just make sure we wake up everyone. Hey guys, it's time for the game. So maybe today's game day, let's try and sleep very early so that by 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. we're all awake to make sure that we support the boys. So we knew even in West Indies, the boys still needed our support. Just putting out positive vibes on social media to ensure that we keep the spirits high. And we did our level best. I think that time the men were playing in the West Indies and the Victoria Pearls were playing in another tournament in Rwanda. But the girls would literally go in the bus for their games in the morning when all of them look sleepy. And they'd be like, hey, we're trying to stay up and support the boys. But I think on the overall, it was a good experience for the boys, a great, great experience for Uganda. And we want to have that experience again. So hopefully the guys can be able to qualify for the World Cup as often as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. It was certainly a wonderful moment for Ugandan cricket to see them qualify for the T20 World Cup, but to win a game as well was even special. Put the cherry on top of the cake. That's for sure. To play against countries like Afghanistan, New Zealand, West Indies in the group is a good experience as well, to play those top-ranked nations and see what it's like to play cricket at that higher level and aspire to get better and be the best you can, which is what you want to do in a World Cup, and also to inspire people back home, as you said, Denis, to make them want to play cricket and say, hey, if they can do it, I can be there one day and do that for the country. So that's what you want, and that's what World Cups and sport is about. And as you said, hopefully be back there again. In terms of goals for the future, Denis, for both teams, women's and men's, obviously for the men, it's to qualify for another T20 World Cup, which is not far away, actually. It's
yeah,
next year,
yeah.
in 2026. So it's come pretty quickly, and also for the women as well to qualify for hopefully a T20 World Cup, women's T20 World Cup in the near future. So what are the goals and expectations that Ugandan cricket have for the national teams, Denis? What are the plans in terms of rankings and improving rankings, and also qualifying for T20 World Cups, etc. So just talk us through all that stuff.
Yeah, I think now for the men, the goal is to make sure we are among the top 20 countries in the world. We are currently ranked 22nd. But the men also compete. It's not just the T20 World Cup. The men also play in what we call the Cricket Challenge League, which is sort of the pathway for us to get to the 50 over World Cup. Last year, in the last cycle, we finished second behind Jersey, and we missed out on qualification to the next round. And this time, we're hoping that we can go one better. The new cycle started last year. We hosted the first leg of that tournament in Kampala, and we were able to finish top of the table. But we want to make sure we finish among the top 2 teams so that we can qualify for the next round of the qualifiers for the 2027 World Cup. And at the next round means that we are playing ODIs. We want to be an ODI nation. So I think that is very, very important for us. Playing ODI cricket comes with a lot more funding and more revenue. So we hope that we can be able to achieve that. So on 2 fronts, in the 50 over game for the men's team, we want to make sure that we finish among the top 2 teams in our Challenge League B group. That group has the likes of Hong Kong, Italy, Bahrain, Singapore, and Tanzania. So hopefully we can finish among the top 2 teams and be able to qualify for the next round. The next round guarantees us playing ODI cricket, which is a good thing for us. So that is one of the targets for the cricket cranes. But also a return to the 2026 World Cup that will be in India and Sri Lanka will be a good one. We are playing the Africa Finals this year in Zimbabwe in September. And hopefully that in their own backyard, we can be able to upset. I think for us, we know the assignment is very easy. We need to upset either Zimbabwe or Namibia for us to go to the World Cup. So the target is on one of those 2. If we can be able to defeat any of the 2, we should be able to. I think the rest of the teams in Africa, we've worked hard to go a notch ahead of them, and not disrespecting them, but I feel we've done well enough to make sure that we can be able to take care of the other teams, as long as we can be able to upset Namibia, who play. Zimbabwe, of course, is a member nation, so they are test playing, and Namibia, who play in a higher league than the rest of us. So hopefully that we can be able to upset any of those 2, and then we should be able to go back to our second World Cup. That is for the men. For the ladies, the Victoria Powers, last year they competed at the global qualifiers in Abu Dhabi. We didn't do well. Very, very, I think we were outclassed. We were shown that we're still missing a level. Both Uganda and Zimbabwe, the teams that qualified out of Africa, were very poor at the tournament, to be honest. So you hope that that gives you an indication that maybe you need to raise your level. We're a bit of a distance away from teams like Thailand, Ireland, Scotland, and the Netherlands. So there's a bit of work for us to do in terms of how we prepare and what sort of skills we're working on. So the girls have also started working very, very hard. One of the key things for them is try and maintain being among the top 18 countries in the world. We've been informed there's an opportunity for the top 18 countries that are not, especially those that are not associates. I mean, those that are associates. There's a plan for them to. There's a new competition they are going to create for them to try and remain competitive. So the first assignment for the girls is to try and maintain. We are currently ranked 18th in the world, so hopefully we can maintain that position for us to be able to get into that competition because the girls need a lot of playing time. They don't have so many opportunities to play like the men. So the more competitions they can play, I think the better for them as well. But they will also be playing at the Africa T20 finals for the ladies this year, sometime in October in Namibia. And if all goes well for them, they should be able to qualify for another global qualifiers. The global qualifiers is the pathway for the women to their T20 World Cup. And hopefully, when they get to the T20 World Cup, they've had a lot of lessons. We've improved on our skills. I think our skill set was lacking, especially when we played in Abu Dhabi. That's all we need to work on. The girls have basically everything, but their skill set in terms of application when it came to players who are better than them was a bit low. And you hope that that is something the technical team has picked on, and they'll be able to work on that. So for both national teams, I think that's a goal. We have the junior boys who we call the baby cricket cranes. They'll be playing at the T20, the under 19 World Cup qualifiers, which will be in Nigeria in late March and early April. And you hope that we can be able to qualify for that as well. I think qualification for the Junior World Cup is very, very important for us, especially if you come from this part of the world, because we produce a lot of junior players. But how is it? It's sort of like this. As you keep going up, the opportunities are not so many, and we produce a lot of junior players. So we need opportunities for them to play, and the World Cup has been a pinnacle for a lot of them. So we hope that they can be able to qualify for a fourth under 19 World Cup. Only one team progresses, but we've been there 3 times, and hopefully this new generation of players can be able to qualify for the under 19 World Cup as well. So 3 big tournaments for us this year, and all of them have what is the right English word? All of them have, there's a lot of perspective, especially if the teams do well. If the under 19s are able to qualify for the World Cup, that's a big opportunity for them in 2026. If the cricket cranes qualify for another World Cup, that's a World Cup for us in 2026. If the girls do well at the qualifiers, that's a global qualifiers for them in 2026. So there's a lot on the line for all the teams that are going to be playing ICC events this year. But we hope that out of the 3, maybe if we're so unlucky, maybe let's get 2. But if we're very lucky, let's get all 3.
Yeah, hopefully that's the case, and it'll be a good year in terms of qualifying for global events for Uganda and the national teams. So in terms of other assignments, bilateral series against other nations, what's on the horizon there for both the women's and men's?
Yeah, I think especially for the women, there's a regional tournament. It's called the Kwibuka. It's played by teams within the region and hosted by Rwanda. It's played annually in remembrance of the 1994 genocide that happened in Rwanda. And it has grown in stature from just being a regional tournament, from just being a bilateral between Uganda and Rwanda into an international tournament. So that is a must, especially for the girls. They're the defending champions, and it's always very, very good because it allows us to expose the younger players. Sometimes you don't have to take your whole senior team, but it gives you an opportunity to give upcoming players an opportunity to play international cricket, and we always love it. We've been part of all the last 10 editions, I think, apart from one which happened during COVID. But Uganda have been a constant at that tournament. For the men really also have a couple of bilaterals. They are leaving in a couple of days to go to Hong Kong to play in the second round of the Challenge League B. But on their way to Hong Kong, they'll pass by India for preparation. And then usually we normally go to Namibia for a couple of series. And I think they will have a couple of series before they go to Zimbabwe for the Africa T20 finals. So there are a couple of bilaterals planned for them as well, just not yet cast in stone for now. But usually before big competitions, the boys normally visit Namibia or South Africa ahead of a big qualifier tournament like the Africa T20 finals.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to have some cricket, better than nothing, I suppose. But that's always good to have some cricket on the horizon and look forward to, and hopefully bring home some series wins and trophies. That's what it's all about, but also looking to get better and improve each and every series and get some small wins and gains, and hopefully that adds up as you go deeper into the year. But thank you, Denis, for sharing that with us about the Uganda cricket national teams, the women's and men's. Some good stuff going on there, some promising talent, and some goals on the horizon to try and qualify for global events. And hopefully we see Uganda qualify for many ICC events, women's and men's T20 World Cups, because certainly last year with the men's T20 World Cup and what Uganda did there inspired not only people back home in Uganda, but other associate nations, I suppose, just to say, no matter how small you are, or you don't have to be the most talented team in the world, but if you work hard and persevere, you can definitely achieve what you want to achieve with your goals and aspirations. And that's what Uganda did in terms of the men's T20 World Cup last year, and winning that game against PNG and doing what they did there. And hopefully the women can follow suit as well. But no doubt, Denis, I'm pretty sure everyone listening to this episode will be cheering Uganda on and hoping that we see Uganda in more ICC events in the future, because they've got some passionate people like yourself and the players, of course, who want to play cricket, have fun and enjoy it, and hopefully inspire people in Uganda to take up the sport and play cricket and hopefully play for the national team. So by all reports, everything is running smoothly, and hopefully that is the case going into the years to come. But no doubt we'll be cheering on, Denis, and hoping that more success will come for Uganda in both women's and men's cricket for the years to come, and certainly well into the future. So let's hope that's the case.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. We are also hopefully next time people hear about Uganda, they can be able to relate with how far we've come.
Absolutely, definitely. Denis, let's talk about the growth and development of cricket within Uganda in terms of getting cricket into local communities, clubs, schools, grassroots, etc. And Denis, this is one of the challenges that many associate nations have, is how they introduce cricket and promote it. That's easier said than done. And it's more of a challenge in Africa, given the lack of facilities and certain countries in Africa struggling with that. So how do the Ugandan Cricket Association try and introduce cricket into the community? How do they establish grassroots cricket, getting local clubs established in local communities, competitions, pathways, systems, underage comps, etc., having facilities like nets and grounds available for people to play in their access in their local areas, making cricket accessible to people, either by TV or live streams, etc., and getting cricket into schools in their programs. So, Denis, what challenges does the Ugandan Cricket Association have in trying to grow and develop cricket in the Ugandan community? And do you see cricket becoming a mainstream sport in Uganda? Your thoughts on those, Denis?
All right, I think one of the challenges and the problems we have with growing the game in this country is equipment and facilities. We have 3 cricket grounds that can host an international game. 3 by international game I mean grounds that have a tough wicket. But all of them are not owned by Uganda Cricket Association. We have a relationship with the people who look after the facilities. So sometimes there are competing needs for the same facilities, and then cricket cannot be able. Cricket takes a back seat. But it has been the goal of Uganda Cricket to find our own ground and develop it into a facility where we can do whatever we want and when we wish to do it. So that's still, I think that the key. It's very, very difficult to grow the game without facilities, especially playing facility. We've seen the impact where these facilities are and what it has had on those communities. It's easier for us to send development coaches there. It's easier to host events or host tournaments. but in places where we are completely lacking facilities, it's difficult for us to make an impact. So it's our responsibility as Uganda Cricket to try and make sure that we stop giving the lack of facilities an excuse, but we make sure that we come up with tangible solutions. We've seen our neighbors do it. Cricket started recently in Rwanda, but they already have developed at least 4 grounds into international standards. So there are examples elsewhere that we can pick up on, and hopefully in the near future we can be able to come up with the facilities. But the other will be the cricket equipment. Cricket equipment, first of all, is very expensive, and I don't think we have a cricket shop in Uganda. We have a couple of Pakistanis and Indians who have shops, but the equipment they sell is very, very expensive. So I mean, an average Ugandan can't just walk in there. If they go to a sports shop, the comparative advantage of walking away with the football is higher than that of walking away with the cricket bat or cricket balls. So that also puts us at a disadvantage. But as an association, we try and make sure that through different partnerships, we make cricket equipment available. We will be happy to know that we have a very, very good relationship with Bankstown in Australia, who annually send us a container full of equipment, whether it is used clothing, helmets, bats, and all those things. They put the community down there. They put them together and they send them to us. And this is a relationship that came about and I think these are the other things that come out of playing at that level. When we played at the Under-19 World Cup in 2004, the team manager then of the Australian team, Mr. Friedman, saw us playing at the World Cup, but we were sort of sharing equipment. So when you're walking out, I ask you for your bat, and I ask you for the bat, and you give it to me, and then I go in and then continue playing. While for us that was like something normal, I think from where he comes from, that seemed odd for a team that is playing at the World Cup. So when he spoke to our team officials about our equipment situation, and then they gave him the reality without trying to seem like we have and we don't need any help. That's when he took it upon himself to make sure that when he goes back home in Bankstown, he mobilizes the local community to give to whatever they can, uniforms, shoes, bats, balls, plastic equipment. So out of his own initiative, every year, Mr. Friedman, Brian Friedman, and Uganda Cricket is forever indebted to him. Since 2005, cricket equipment has been sent over to Uganda, and this has greatly, greatly benefited Ugandan cricket, because when that equipment comes over, we're able to share it with the different communities that work with us. But how our game grows in the communities, because it's a bit of a big country, cricket is primarily managed in the capital city, Kampala, but we sort of marked out 6 different regions of this country. We have over 130 districts in this country, so it's very difficult for Ugandan cricket to be in all of them. But we have different regions in this country that have been marked out, and we use sports hubs to help us take the game in the communities. And Uganda Cricket, through their development managers and development officers, they look after the sports hubs. They support them in terms of capacity, administration, equipment, technical, to make sure that the game is sustainable in these communities. So that's how the game gets in these communities. But the backbone of the game in Uganda is the schools. We can never run away from the schools. Cricket for us comes from schools, so we always want to have national team players who are coming out of the school structure, because it helps you with so many other things in terms of player discipline and things like that. So the game is really very, very grounded in schools and structured in schools. I think the community bit started during the advent of COVID. For 2 years, schools were closed in Uganda. So first of all, if the schools are closed, means that our conveyor belt for young players has already been closed. So we needed to find a way of making sure we engage communities in the game. And we're even lucky that the government, cricket was one of the top sports, I think, that was allowed by government to, for that soft landing bit, were one of the games that were allowed to be able to continue running in the communities. And we started slowly engaging different communities on the game. It is still very, very on a small scale, but I think we shall get there. to have the game in the communities and making sure people can play the game outside of schools rather than only waiting for when the school time is on to play the game. So we are growing the community part very, very slowly. But in terms of of taking the game, of growing the game in the country, I think those are the simple ways of how it happens. Our local cricket clubs, we have 22 men's clubs and 11 female teams. But of the 22, most of them are really Kampala based. So our local league is mostly in Kampala. I don't want to say it's all over the country, but there are players all over the country, but most of the teams are Kampala based and they're run by people in Kampala. And of the 22 teams, I think about a third of those are locally managed teams, but most of them are, are Asian teams. They run, they have Asians in them. That's why there's also a bit of of representation of Asians on our national team because they essentially come from these teams. So we have 22 men's local teams that play. We have two divisions. We have a first division and a second division. So it is 10 teams up and then the others in the second division. And then we play a 50 over league and a T20 league. Because we used to play a lot of 50 over cricket in this country, 50 over has really sort of taken precedence over T20. So our 50 over league is really the important one. And then the T20 is whoever wants to play can come and have a swing at it. But our 50 over league, because I think because of the culture, we come from a 50 over culture that sort of stuck and remained with people. So you will see a lot of teams very, very committed in the 50 over league than in the T20 league. So we play the 50 over league for the men and then the T20 league as well. The 50 over league is one played over divisions, and our T20 league is played in sort of like an FA Cup format where everyone plays everyone, so there's no division. And then the girls play a T20 league and the 40 over league. The women's league is essentially run by Uganda Cricket because there was not so much commitment in teams investing in women's cricket. And because the women's game has just grown, it needed a lot of hand holding. So the women's league is essentially managed by Uganda Cricket and it supports the clubs that play in the women's league. So the women, the 11 clubs that are ideally, they are run by different individuals, but heavily supported and complemented by Uganda Cricket in terms of logistics. So we have 11 women's teams and 22 clubs for the men. But the men's clubs are ideally the independent ones. They run on their own. They have sort of the capacity to be managed on their own, unlike the women's club. So, but hopefully the future for the local clubs is to try and get regional leagues. Since we have 6 regions where cricket is taking root, we hope that these different regions can also be able to have their own leagues in their own localities without everyone having to come to Kampala, because sometimes even the traveling is not very, very safe as well. So you want to minimize that travel between the different regions for everyone to come and play in Kampala.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good to hear that there's methods and strategies in place to ensure that the country gets covered and everyone gets a chance to play cricket and the game grows and develops, which is fantastic, Denis, to hear. In terms of, I always ask this question to all my guests, Denis, about countries in the associate world, their relationship with the ICC. Now we know that there's a lot of people that say the ICC could be doing better, but in terms of the regional bodies like ICC, Europe, Asia, or Pacific, or Americas, or even Africa, a lot of the people I've interviewed and asked this question have said, yeah, we've had good relationships with the regional bodies of the ICC. So is that the case with Uganda in terms of the regional body there in terms of the ICC? How's that relationship going between the two?
Yeah, we have a very good relationship with the ICC Africa office, and I think they do a lot of work in supporting associates. I think one of the things that has really helped Uganda Cricket is I think we're one of the few associate nations that have sort of a structure that works. We have a CEO, we have operations manager, development officers, communications, and so many other guys that support the association. So I think it's easy for ICC to work with you when you have that sort of structure. Some countries are not as fortunate as we are. So you probably have the president doing everything, which is not the way it is for us here. We have a proper structure in office that looks after the affairs of the game, the day-to-day affairs of the game, and that helps us a lot. But we have, I think, we've gotten very, very good support from the ICC, especially in capacity building, ensuring that we are upskilling our coaches. The coaches are getting these levels, moving from level 1 to level 2. Not just the coaches, the tutors as well, the curators of grounds, the umpires. So they've been very, very supportive in helping us, making sure that our people get upskilled to a standard that can help us go to the next level. Because one of the key things for us is to improve our capacity as an organization. We are trying to make sure we have as many level 1 and level 2 coaches as possible, because it's help us grow the game in the communities. So you want your coaches at that level to be teaching the right things, so that by the time the players come through our system and they get to the national team, they've learned how to play the cover drive the proper way. You don't want to be correcting how to play the cover drive at the national team level. So I think the ICC has helped us do that a lot, especially in raising the capacity of our people, and we have a good relationship with them. Ultimately, uh, and I mentioned it somewhere, we don't want to say we are heavily reliant on them, especially because of funding. Uh, when you come to this part of the world, there's not a lot of there are not so many people who are willing to pay to watch a cricket match. There's not a lot of corporate money that will go into sports. The corporate people want to sponsor music shows and things like that. So, and then the government gives support, but government funding comes in with priorities. If there's a more pressing need, they will take care of that first before thinking about sports. So we are heavily reliant on that. ICC funding puts us Uganda. A lot of people in the Ugandan sports ecosystem say cricket is a planned child of Ugandan sport, because we are the only sport that all right had gone off. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dennis. We had some technical difficulties there for a little bit, but you're back.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying, I think we're one of the few sports in Uganda that really is not organizing car washes or calling people or begging the public to help us because we want to go somewhere, but because of that's all because of the privilege that comes from having a good relationship with the ICC. So we try and make sure that we do what is required of us in terms of ICC requirements to ensure that we keep this privilege. It's very, very important. I think without it, we would never be able to do the things we can do right now, and even do so much more.
Yeah, definitely. So that's good to hear that you have a good relationship with the ICC in terms of a regional perspective. But do you think the ICC can do better in terms of higher up the chain of command at the ICC? Do you think they can do better for associate nations more broadly, how that's run across the world in terms of transparency, funding, just helping countries out try to grow and develop the sport better?
Yeah, I think the hand holding has been good. It could be better, of course. No one is content. I'm sure even maybe England or Australia and India as well would say, we know we want to do better. Wherever there's an opportunity to do better, I think associates will be very, very grateful. For now, it's there are parameters. I think there are known parameters for you to be able to access more funding and things like that. And of course, given what you're getting right now, if you put it to good use, you could be able to get yourselves. You keep climbing up, and I think one of the maybe for me the thing would be in terms of more playing opportunities. There's usually maybe just one ICC tournament in a 2-year window, and then for example, if teams don't go so far, sometimes we feel sorry for other teams because they're not they get in and they lose on the first opportunity. It means they'll have to wait another maybe 3 or 4 years before they get another opportunity again to play in an ICC event. I think those playing opportunities are very, very important. It's difficult to organize bilaterals between different teams because of the cost. Because of the cost, so those ICC events come in handy to make sure that teams are able to get playing time. And I think that would be important if we can be able to get as much playing time as possible to help us push the national team. So the playing time opportunity will be there and will be very good. And also in terms of also helping us develop the capacity, ICC has created opportunities for us to be able to continuously make sure that the people who are involved in the game, volunteers, coaches, umpires, scorers, all learn the new ways of the game and also be upskilled. So we're grateful for that, and I think that is it's difficult for us to go to the next level if you don't have people who are competent enough to take you to the next level. And I think those trainings come in handy. I think for the last 2 years, we've had the 100% program run by the ICC for females, and we've had at least 2 people from Uganda taking part in it. And we continuously want to be given opportunities like those where we can be able to expose our staff to the best, for them to be able to engage with the best people in the world and people who've been through these opportunities. So those are some of the things that we are grateful for. There's always room to do better, but and I feel that if you continuously engage with each other, it's very easy to find out what are the pain points and where do associates needs help if we continuously engage with each other. So, but for now, I think the ICC are doing their best within their own means to make sure that they support associate cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always get better, and you can always improve things going forward in the future. And certainly that's the case with the ICC in all aspects of the game, not just associate nations, but they can do many things better. In terms of participation numbers and levels of kids joining and playing cricket for clubs and wanting to play cricket, Denis, what are the numbers looking like in terms of girls and boys wanting to play cricket in Uganda?
In terms of our numbers, they may not be accurate, but I'll give an estimate. For example, we have 3 different ways of capturing our numbers. We have what we call a mini cricket program. Mini cricket is where probably in your part of the world could be like Milo kids, what the kids who are just starting the game play softball cricket. Our mini cricket program is a national program. It's for only children who are in primary school. Primary school is the ages of about 5 and 12, and that is spread all over the whole country. So we have over 1,000 kids who take part in that program every year. And then the next level, which is what we call the schools league program. The schools league program is for those that are in what we call secondary school in our part of the world. So from the age of about 13 to somewhere around 19 and 20. And we have over 100 boys schools playing in this program, and 60 girls schools that are part of that program. So those are sort of the numbers. So if you say 100 schools, and give or take, each school has about 1,000 kids. Same thing for the girls. It will give you some perspective on the numbers that we're working with. So those are sort of the numbers at play. But the mini cricket program, I think, is one of the easiest catching. It's one of the ones where it's sort of the entry point for us in trying to take school cricket to different parts of the country. And I think we have more than 1,000 primary schools, not 1,000 children, but 1,000 primary schools all over the country that take part in that program annually. It's a very, very big program, and it shows a lot of excitement when the kids are part of that program, because for them it's just see ball, hit ball. There's not too much detail about ball here, ball there, but it's see ball, hit ball, and in the most natural of ways. There's no clothing, but the young boys and girls just walk out in their school uniform and start playing. So that program has played in 2 different categories, under 11 and under 13 for both boys and girls. And then our schools league program has both the girls schools and the boys schools taking part in it. So those are both those are so they're not very accurate numbers, but I've given you an estimate of how many could be in each of the different categories.
Yeah, it's really encouraging to hear that boys and girls are looking to play cricket, be interested in it, and looking to, play it for many years to come, which is fantastic. And it's very encouraging to hear that, Denis. And it's also encouraging to hear that the growth and development of the game in Uganda is doing well. Obviously, a lot of areas to still work on, but it's getting there and it's improving year on year. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's going well for us. It's just the challenge. It's a big country as well, so not a very small country. And running the game from Kampala to try and get to the farthest person who's about 1,000 kilometers away from the capital is not very easy. And of course, even I think the key is the equipment at that level. Plastic equipment I think, is just unavailable in this country. So for us to get plastic equipment to try and teach the game to people who are very far from us is a bit of a challenge. But once we solve that matrix, especially of equipment for early learners, we've tried to improvise by making some wooden bats that the kids use, wooden bats and tennis balls, so that you bring out the whole context. But it can do better. We've had partnerships, I think, with organizations such as there's one called Cricket Without Boundaries from the UK, as well as the MCC Foundation from the UK, who support our programs in areas that are very far away from Kampala. And I think they visit every year to just try and check on them. And I think those are some of the people who come with that plastic equipment that we use in those communities. And we are also very, very grateful to them for helping us make sure that we take the game far and beyond from Kampala.
Absolutely. And it's always great to see other people and other members of the cricket world help each other. That's what it's all about. We want everyone to be playing this game and grow and develop it, and have other people around the world, especially in associate nations, enjoy cricket like we do in other mainstream cricket countries like Australia, for example, that we take for granted sometimes, whereas in the associate world, it can definitely change people's lives, cricket, and that's certainly the case in Uganda. So thank you, Denis, for sharing that with us, the growth and development side of the game in Uganda. It's very encouraging to hear that the game is doing well, and long may that continue going into the future. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
You're welcome.
Denis, we finally reached the end of a long discussion. It's been enjoyable. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm sure everyone listening or watching this episode has as well. So we've got one more topic to discuss, Denis, to finish off today. And Denis, I thought we'd talk about what the future holds for cricket in Uganda. It's very hard to predict the future, as we know. So Denis, looking into the crystal ball, how do you see Uganda cricket and associate cricket going into the future? Your thoughts on that to end our discussion today, looking into the crystal ball into the future.
I think if I look into the crystal ball, we should have a cricket ground of our own. For a very long time, we have not been able to do the things that we can do because we don't own a home of cricket. And hopefully that in a couple of years, not so many, we should have our own cricket home where we can take. I mean, my kids play cricket, so they can have a place where they can be able to play the game. And also inspire a lot of generations. We cannot run away from the fact that a cricket home will immensely change. The ecosystem of the game in this country. When we were fully in control of the only cricket, what we call the home of cricket in Uganda, it had one of the big things about it was that it was sort of a place every time when you're leaving work and you're thinking of a place to go, you're like, hey, let me go to Lugogo and I'll probably find the other guys and then we catch up, because it was sort of a bar area where I would sit. I've told you the 2023 World Cup, the 2003 World Cup was the first World Cup where all of us really got to watch that World Cup. But because of the clubhouse at Lugogo, we go there every day and then you're sure that cricket is on the screen. But there are many other people you can watch the game with, you talk about it. Australia won like this, South Africa won like that. So there are many aspects to it, not just providing a playing facility. So we've been lacking that in the fraternity for the last few years when we haven't had our own home. And you feel that if we're able to have our own facility, it allows us to even grow socially as a community, as an ecosystem. We're not so many cricketers. We can literally count ourselves by numbers. So it's still a very small ecosystem, but when you have a home of cricket, it allows you to bond even away from the game. That's how you. I mean, my kids will come and meet other cricketers' kids, and then they create a sort of a bond amongst themselves that will turn into a generation that will take the game to the next level. So for some of us, we came from that sort of background, and hopefully that we can be able to achieve that in the next few years as Uganda Cricket, where we have a home of our own, where we can take our talent to the next level. It's easy for you to have holiday camps. It's easy for you to organize training camps for them when you sort of have the control that you want. But if you don't have that control, then you're always very dependent on other factors for you to be able to do things that you want to do. So I think for me, when I look in the crystal ball, that has to be our number one goal. When we do that, all the other things will come together. If for us to go to be able to qualify for World Cups more often or regularly, those are all things that can be done when you have a place where players can train well. Players can even train after work. Players can be able to work on their skills. Players can walk in anytime they want and have a net session or a practice session. You can be able to engage your development coaches in one place. You can be able to upskill them in one place. So there are so many things that come together when you have a sort of a facility that can take you to the next level. So hopefully that we can be able to achieve that in the next in a few years to come.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Let's hope that's the case. Looking into the future, Denis, but thank you for that prediction of what's the future going to be like for cricket in Uganda and also associate cricket as well going into the future. So thank you for providing that prediction into the crystal ball. Let's see if that is the case in the years to come. We can only wait with bated breath.
I'll let you know when it happens.
Yes. Well, Denis, thank you for joining me today for this Associate Cricket Series episode to discuss all things Uganda cricket. I've enjoyed it immensely. I've learned so much, and I'm sure everyone listening and watching to this episode has as well. Denis, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they do that? If they want to make some inquiries about Ugandan cricket, or if they can help out in any way, where can people do that?
All right, and very good question. And I think when you told me that it was difficult for you to even find me, I was surprised. I thought I was very easy to find, especially if you want to talk about Ugandan cricket. But we're very, very active on social media. I think that is one of the things we've done to make sure we activate all our social media channels. So even if you send us a DM on X, which is formerly Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, you should be able to get a quick response. But we have a website, www.ugandacricket.com. For any inquiries, you can always send them to info@ugandacricket or media@ugandacricket, which is the communications email. But I'm always very, very responsive, especially on media@ugandacricket.com. I always let you know if maybe you want to speak to someone else. I can always put you in the right direction, or you have an inquiry that I can be able to respond to, and I'll be able to do that. So, but essentially, like I've said, we're very, very, very plugged in on social media. If you send, even if it's on LinkedIn, when you send us a message, we shall be able to respond to you and get back to you as quickly as possible. And for those that even want to send any help, info@ugandacricket.com or media@ugandacricket.com. Those are the emails that you can be able to use to reach out to us and see how we can be able to collaborate and take Uganda cricket to the next level.
Yeah, definitely. We will leave links to those in the description of this episode for everyone to check out if they want to get in touch with Denis and the team there at Uganda Cricket for anything about playing the game over there, or inquiries, or just want to help out with some cricket equipment. It's much appreciated. Before we go, remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. So the podcast is available on Anchor, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Once again, thank you, Denis, for joining me today to discuss all things Uganda cricket. I hope all of you watching or listening to this Associate Cricket Series episode learned a lot about cricket in Uganda from Denis. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.